Hello there. I'm continuing our series, my analysis and presentation of the games over the board games in the Split Open tournament. We are now finally in the last round, round 9 of 9. And you will see just an introduction to this game. It's all about bishops. I managed to create one small weakness. Then I deliberately went to the bishop endgame because my evaluation was that my bishop is better and that I have easier play with my bishop that he does with his, and this is what brought me victory in the end. But before I go to this game, I just want to go quickly in the last game. So in the game before the last video, this was the position from the last game. Okay, now this is also about bishops, and in fact, not one, more than one person told me about this position, and one of the viewers left the comment, and he was right. So in this position, after this move e5 by black, this bishop becomes bad bishop, because you can see that his pawns, especially when I push d5, which is the best move here. So after I push d5. This bishop becomes bad bishop. His central pawns are fixed on the dark squares, and replacing this bishop for this bishop is just a terrible idea. Unless I have a concrete plan and concrete tactical sequence, concrete variation on how to get the attack and how to checkmate the king. So if this plan is okay, if I can calculate some concrete advantage, like material advantage, checkmate or something. But just to replace these bishops without any tactical forcing sequence is a very bad strategical principle. And this is what I did. And if you remember, I'll just fast forward. And if you remember, I ended up with the end game in which I had a bad bishop, so it doesn't matter now. We exchange everything, and we ended up in the end game in which I had a bad bishop and he had a good bishop. So after this, yeah. Okay, and now you can see that my pawns are on the light squares. They are blocking this bishop. They are restricting my bishop, but also these pawns are a target for his bishop. So if he can somehow I don't know, attack my pawns, this is a permanent weakness. So in the game I'm about to show you, the similar thing will happen. Just before I continue, I will just want to tell you that I will give in the description box two videos in which I highly recommend. One is by international master Andras Toth, a chess coach. He made a video in which he deals with exactly these kind of positions when you have Yanketto bishop, and now the question is should you exchange the bishops or not. I think he's analyzing this very position in the video, and also another video from the Jerry from Chess Network, which is a long video. It talks about good and bad bishop. It's a 2 hours video, but I highly recommend it because he really goes deep into this stuff. So this is what I would recommend you to check out for your chess education. Okay, that being said, let's go to the game from the round 9 now. Okay, my opponent opened the game with e4, I responded e5, knight f3, I went for the Russian defense or Petrov game, whatever you like to call it, so knight to f6. Knight takes e5, he went for the main line, d6, this is all just main line, knight f3, knight takes c4, so we both took each other's e pawns. D4, very good move. I think it's better than D3, which some players play. D4, you can see that his both bishops are now open. I respond with D5, so I too want to have my bishops open. Bishop to D3, okay, preparing to castle, attacking my knight, and maybe preparing some kind of C4 later on. Knight to C6, this move, okay, go away from the microphone here. So this move might look like counterintuitive because you know, when you have fixed pawns, queenside pawns, and queen pawn game, you usually don't want your knight to be obstacle to your c pawn. But I know from experience and from theory that this is the best move here, and I learned this by playing Russian defense a lot. having this position many times and then analyzing, look at the opening book, look at the master games, and so I just learned that this is the best move here. Okay, so he castled. I played bishop to e7, also preparing to castle. He played c3. Okay, he's fortifying the center, but maybe there are more active moves in this position, but okay. I played bishop to g4. Now I'm pinning the knight, and I wanted to play this bishop to g4 before he plays h3. So here maybe he could have played h3, and then I wouldn't have this move. But okay, now I do have it, so now his knight is pinned to the queen. Knight b to d2. I mean, here this knight doesn't want to go back, so I mean, exchanging is the only reasonable move. So I exchanged the knights, he took with the bishop, and now I castled, he put his rook on the e-file, I put my rook on the e-file. Okay, so far so good. The engine could think that maybe there are some better moves from the both sides, but all the moves so far are, I think, are logical. They are just developing pieces. h3, putting a question mark on my bishop. I'm just retreating and I'm maintaining the pin. Bishop to f1. Okay, this is very dubious move because this bishop is his good bishop. I mean, his pawns are on the dark squares, so he's having his good bishop, and this bishop is very active here. And here, this bishop is very passive. I don't know if he was afraid of some kind of attack. I'm not sure why did he do it. I mean, this does make sense if the bishop is, for example, like here, my bishop is on e7, so I will play f8 at one moment just to release my rook, for example. But why move the bishop here? I'm not sure. Anyway, queen to d7, and now my development is complete. So one of the definitions of the complete development is the moment when your rooks are connected. Bishop to f4, he's now developing his last piece, but he has to be careful because this bishop is unprotected. So always be careful when you develop a piece on the unprotected square. Usually you want to do something about this in the future, make it protected. Bishop to f8, okay. So why didn't I, for example, offer the exchange here of bishops? Well, obviously, as Jerry from the Chess Network explained many times, you should always look at your fixed pawns in the center. So I have a fixed pawn on the light square, so this makes my dark square bishop a strong bishop. So I don't want, and also vice versa, his dark square bishop is a bad bishop. So I don't want to play bishop to d6 and exchange my good bishop for his bad bishop. So this is why I decided to play a bishop to f8, so I'm keeping my bishop, and also I'm now fighting for the e-file. Queen to d2. Okay, this is a mistake, and you can pause the video now if you want to see why this is a mistake. Okay, I hope you pause the video. So this is a mistake for the simple reason that now I can take this knight, and he has to take with the pawn. And this will, first of all, ruin his pawn structure. This will make his king vulnerable. He'll have isolated doubled pawns. He'll have this weakness. So, and also if you look at this position, it's not a very sharp and wild position. In fact, my defense is very solid. So you don't expect that he will win by checkmating my king or by doing some crazy combinations in the middle game. This game is most likely to go to the end game, and when it does, I will have a huge advantage because of his ruined pawn structure. My guess is that he forgot about this, that he just didn't see this. I don't think that he did this on purpose. So bishop takes f3, g takes f3, and now given that he has such weaknesses on the king side and that his king is open, I want to bring my pieces on the king side, and I want to play on the king side, trying to exploit some of these weaknesses. So this is why I played knight to e7, so bringing my knight closer to the action. Bishop to g2. Another dubious move. I mean, now this bishop is completely passive, blocked by his own pawns. I guess that he was afraid of having the exposed king, so I guess this is played like a shield to his king, but it's unnecessary. He's just inactivating his bishop, his good bishop. Knight to f5 now. Okay, just bringing things closer to the king. I have moves like knight to h4 maybe in the future. Bishop to g3. Okay, now this bishop is protected. He's protecting also h4, and he's inviting me to take the bishop, which of course I will not do, because if I take the bishop, first of all, he will just fix his pawn structure, and second of all, this is his bad bishop. You can see that his fixed pawn is on the dark square, so why would I trade a good knight? I mean, this knight is very active. Why would I play good knight, trade a good knight for the bad bishop? So I just played g6. I was looking here at this moment, what is my least active piece, and I see that this bishop is very passive, and it doesn't have much prospects here on the queen side. So I wanted to put my bishop on the king side as well. So g6 is played for that purpose. King to f1. This is not advisable because as long as the queens are on the board, you don't want to bring your king closer to the center. So if the queens are off the board, so if you can imagine that these queens are off the board, then this move is perfectly valid and justified, and maybe even the best move in the position. But with the queens on the board, exposing your king is never a good idea. King belongs to the corner somewhere here. So these are places for the king when the queens are on the board. So this is just exposing his king to some kind of checks or something. So not a good move. I understand he wants to fight for the e-file, so he just helps. And also he wants, I guess he wants to control the e2 square just in case I want to penetrate someday here. Okay, it's time to activate my bishop. So bishop h6. You can see that this knight is nicely defending the bishop. So I have some coordination here, attacking the queen. Queen to d3, and now you can see that this bishop is attacking my c7 pawn, so this queen is bound to protect the pawn, and I want to solve this situation, so I just play c6. Now, okay, this is secured, and this bishop is now looking at the heir. Rook to e5. Okay, I guess he wanted to double the rooks. Here my thinking was that I welcome exchange, I welcome going to the endgame for all the reasons I said, so I just took the rook, and he took with the bishop, and this was a mistake because he could at least diminish his weaknesses by taking with the pawn, because now these two isolated, these two doubled pawns are will not be isolated anymore. So these are now doubled and isolated, and if he would take with the pawn, he could maybe connect these pawns. So this was a mistake, and now I was thinking about this knight. What can this knight do? And I came up with this kind of maneuver. So just trying to get either to f4 or to g5. So from g5 I hit both of these pawns, and you can see that my queen is also hitting this pawn. From f4 I hit the queen and the pawn, and this queen is also hitting the pawn. So this was my maneuver. Of course, if he wants to give his bishop for my knight, he's welcome to do this. He has a bishop pair, so I don't mind trading off the bishop for the knight, even if this is his bad bishop. So yeah, I know. Previously I said I didn't want to trade this, but this is because it will fix his pawn structure, and it will come with tempo, and this is not justified by just taking the bad bishop. But now if he wants to take it, I'm okay with this, because yeah, I can just take it back. By taking back, I'm improving my position, and he still has weaknesses. So when I said that I don't want to take here because I don't want to trade good knight for bad bishop, what I meant to say, it's not worth it because I will give him the opportunity to fix all his weaknesses. Okay, rook to e1. He's fighting for the e-file. Knight to e6. I'm completing my maneuver. a4. I guess he ran out of the ideas, and then he just decided that this could be a useful move taking space on the queen side, which maybe is not a bad idea. And now I made a mini blunder. So I played here knight to f4, thinking that I'm winning a pawn, because now I'm hitting his queen, and I'm also hitting the pawn, and this pawn is hit twice. So my way of thinking here was this, and this is the problem I had in my thinking process. So knight to f4, his queen is hit, he had to move his queen somewhere, and after he moves his queen, I'll just grab the pawn. Maybe I even sometimes I check for checks. So I say, okay, if knight f4, Does he have any checks in the position? No. Okay, then he has to move queen somewhere, and then I will just take the pawn. And I have to be more disciplined. My thought process has to be more disciplined, and I have to think always, okay, I hit his queen. Where can he move his queen? What is the best square for his queen? And I didn't ask myself this question, so I missed queen d2, which is a very nice move because now my knight is pinned to the bishop, so I cannot take because he'll just take my bishop. And also this knight is now hit twice and defended only once. So very tricky move. I missed this move, but okay, luckily I had a defense, but it could happen that I don't have the defense and it will be very ugly. So yeah, one defense is just to play g5, which is terrible because it blocks my bishop and everything, and the another defense is just queen to f5, which is actually a fine move. And now he realized that this knight is very strong here, so he decided just to take the knight and think this is the correct decision. And now I have the decision to make, do I want to exchange queens or not? Well, for all the reasons I said, I want to exchange queens because I want to go to the endgame and I want to exploit these weaknesses. And also you can see that my bishop is stronger than, my light square bishop is stronger than his light square bishop, because I have some targets. So in the end game, the question is, the main question is, do you have weaknesses? So if the position is, let's say, even in all parameters, except that one side has one weakness and another side has zero weakness, then the side with the weakness is worse, and the side with no weakness has an easier game. To have an easier game in chess, this means that you can afford to make suboptimal moves and nothing dramatic will happen. And if you are playing difficult position, this means that if you make suboptimal moves, you will most likely lose the game. So the side who has a more difficult game has to make perfect move every time. So even if the engine says that some position is 0.0, this doesn't mean that this is equal from the human perspective, because it can be 0.0 with one side having to make every move a perfect move in order to stay in the game, and another side can make any kind of suboptimal moves and still be in the game. So, and this is what I thought the situation is here. So I decided to exchange queens. So we exchanged queens, and then, of course, before this, I had to encounter this threat of penetration, and I have calculated that this is not a threat, that he can penetrate, but I can very easily kick him off. And this is what happened in the game. So after we exchanged queens, he really went to e7. Okay, now first he's hitting my pawn, so I have to defend it with rook to b8. Now the pawn is defended. He played king e1. Okay, I'm going towards the center. But now I played king to f8, hitting the rook, and the rook has to go back, because if it comes to d7, I'll just play king to e8, and this rook will be trapped because I control these two squares by my bishop. So I calculated all this here when I was thinking about what will happen after this sequence of moves. So you have to take these things into account. Okay. And now he had to go back, and for all the reasons I said, I evaluated this again. I saw that he has this weakness, fixed weakness, which I can attack with my bishop, and also he has these pawns, which are on the dark squares. So I decided that I will have the better endgame, so I decided to exchange rooks. Okay. Now he is bringing his king up. I'm also bringing my king up. So once the other side starts to bring his king up, you have to bring your king up, because the task of your king is to stop his king from penetrating into your position. So king to e8, king d3, king d6, and now he plays b3, obviously trying to fix, I mean, this is a weakness, so he wants to put it on the light square. And you can notice here also that if you are looking at the king side, he cannot do much, because if he moves if he plays h4, I will immediately play h5, and this will be a fixed weakness, which cannot be defended by neither by the king, nor by the bishop, nor by the other pawn. So if he plays h4, h5, fixing the weakness, this pawn falls. So he cannot move this pawn, and he cannot move this pawn because it's blocked. So you can see that he's completely locked on the king side. So he played b3, bishop to g5. Now you can see that still he cannot move any of the pawns. Bishop to f1. Okay, he has to activate his bishop somehow. f5. Why f5? So, like I said, I need to fix a weakness. I need to have at least one fixed weakness in my opponent's position in order to claim that I'm better. And then when you fix one weakness, then you have to provoke another weakness on the other side of the board. And then when you manage to provoke two weaknesses, then he cannot cover both weaknesses, and you can win. So you must create one weakness at a time. And here the weakness is this pawn, f2 pawn. This f2 pawn can be attacked by my bishop and can only be defended by the king. So, and then if king protects this pawn, I can play on the other side of the board, and the king cannot come to help, because then this pawn is falling. So how to fix this weakness is to push my pawn here on f4, and then this weakness is fixed. So this was my strategy. So f5, he played b4 here, I played f4, and now this is fixed. King to d2, bishop to h4. Now I'm attacking this pawn, this weakness, and he has to commit his king. So now his king is here forever, having to guard this pawn. The king cannot participate on the game on the queen side. Okay, b6, and now I'm playing on the queen side. I have a king on the queen side, and he doesn't. So that is my advantage. Bishop to d3, c5, opening the position. Basically, the goal is to be able to get my king up. He played d takes c5 with a check, b takes c5, and now he made a losing blunder. But I mean, the computer evaluates this position as equal. And if two grandmasters were playing, or two engines, one against another, it would most likely be draw. But with two humans, I mean, with this huge weakness here, and also his pawns here, my king more active, I don't see how human could stand all this pressure. Anyway, he played b5. The best move would be b takes c5, and now, okay, the computer says it's equal, but I don't think it's equal from the human perspective. Anyway, he played b5. Okay, and now immediately this allows me to fix another weakness. So c4 is played for the sole purpose of fixing this weakness. And now I achieved my goal of creating two weaknesses. So this is the so-called principle of two weaknesses in chess. So now he has two weaknesses. He cannot defend them with his bishop. I can attack them with my bishop and my king. So I will now just exploit these weaknesses. Bishop to c2. Okay, he's trying something. And now I'm going for another weakness. Bishop to d8. I'm going to hit this pawn. King to e2. Bishop to a5. And now how can he defend this pawn? He cannot go here, obviously. The only way is king to d2, but now this pawn is pinned, and I'm just winning the pawn. So this is what happens when you manage to fix weaknesses on the right color square. And now it's just over in several moves. Bishop to d1. I take the pawn with check. He moves the king. I put my king up. He moves the king, and now I can go for this pawn as well. So king e1, king c2, king takes f2. I mean, I didn't even have to go for this pawn. I could just push these pawns, but okay. Well, I mean, why not take a free pawn? I can always make a mistake, and it's better to be a pawn up. King to d2, and now I'm pushing my my king up. So I'm not in a hurry to push these pawns. I'm just, my king is here. It's on the dark square. I don't need to be afraid of his bishop. And yeah, now I will push. King to c1, and now, okay, you can pause the video and ask yourself, what is the best move? I mean, what is the better move? Should I push d pawn or should I push c pawn? It's probably the same in this position because I have some other advantages and it's winning, but just a matter of principle. What is better of these two moves? Okay, I hope you pause the video. So the principle when you have two connected pawns against the bishop, the principle is that you don't want to make moves like c3, making allowing your opponent the blockade. So you can imagine if you play, let's imagine that there are no other pieces, other threats and so on the board. So with this move he can very easily establish a blockade. So he could play for example king to c2. I'm just now making random moves just to demonstrate the point. So this is the point. So if you put your pawns on the dark squares, you are giving him the light squares and he can establish a blockade. And what now? I mean, okay, now in this position I can take the pawn and so on. But imagine that there are no other stuff in the position, that this is everything, that these other pawns don't exist. So in this position I cannot do anything. I cannot make any progress. So if these pawns would not exist, I think this would be a draw. So this is an instructive moment. Again, you want to think about his bishop and the squares. So c3 is not advisable because you're giving him light squares and allowing the blockade. So every time you're playing against the bishop, you should play the moves like I did in the game. I just played d3, and now he doesn't have the opportunity to blockade. I can block any attempts with my bishop. King to d2, and now bishop e3 check, king to e1, it's over, say c3, and I'm just going through. He will lose the bishop and the game very soon. So at this point, my opponent resigned the game. Okay, this is it. This is the last round. I had a victory in the last round, and this is psychologically a good feeling. I'm leaving the tournament with a victory. My opponent was he's 19 years old, I think, and he was not rated at the tournament, so he's new in chess. He got his rating later. I put his rating just which he obtained after the tournament, just to see his strength. And yeah, it was an interesting game. I think a nice game in which I just had this one weakness. I played against this weakness. I try to be aware of the bishops, which bishop is good, which is not good. I was thinking forward in the end game, and I correctly estimated that I would have the advantage in the end game, and then I just went on and seized the opportunity. So also the game had some instructive moments regarding bishops, regarding end games. So I hope that you will I hope that you will like the video, and you will learn something from your chess as well. Okay, this is it for today. I will continue with my next tournament. So the next video will be most likely the round 1 of the Sholto Open of the next tournament, and then I have 9 more games on the next tournament to analyze. So see you soon with more chess. Cheers.